Okay. Well, hi everyone. Today we are doing a little interview with a speech language pathology assistant, Daisy. Daisy, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Um, so Daisy and I work together at the same district, but before we get into you being an SLPA, can you tell me a little bit about what drew you to this field? Why did you choose speech?
Um, it's a funny story. I know nothing about the field. Um, the majority of therapists either have a family member that was in speech at some point in their lives, or maybe they themselves were in speech therapy growing up. I did not have that background. But my mom was a caregiver for the majority of my life, and she either care of the elderly or kids with like autism and Down syndrome. And so at the time, one of the little boys she was taking care of had autism and he was nonverbal. And what really drew me in was just watching her take care of him. And I remember he was able to go home. He was able to come to our house and we would like model things for him and show him songs like based on his routine, like brushing his teeth and bath time. And then one day he just surprised all of us and he was singing the bath time song on his own. And then I remember we just like all looked at each other, and it was it was a small thing, but to us it was very huge because it was the first time we were hearing him communicate and use his words. And um, it was just amazing to see and to witness. And honestly, that's what just motivated me to join the program. And I've
I
been here
love
ever
that
since.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that actually. That's awesome. I love that you
Yeah.
got that experience early to like
Mhm.
fall in love with this.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Um,
like I said, prior to that, I knew nothing. I didn't know it existed, honestly. And I just kind of dove right in after that.
I love how like the people that we work with like impact our lives just as much as
Mhm.
we impact their lives.
Yes.
It's so special.
Yes.
So I know some things about the way that you became an SLPA, but tell us a little bit about your track. Like where did you go to school? That kind of stuff.
So I remember I was looking up the programs that EMCC offered, and speech therapy was fortunately one of them because I did not plan on going to university. Like I said, I didn't know anything about the field, and coming out of high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do either. So when I learned about the program and that EMCC offered it. It was close to home, and it was what was the most convenient for me. So I completed the program there, and then right after I did my practicum hours, and then yeah, just kind of got a job right after.
Yeah.
And
Did you do your practice? Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that I've stuck with the same district ever since.
I was going to ask, were your practicum hours at the same district?
No, they were at Legacy Traditional.
Okay.
Yeah,
So a
I
charter
did.
school.
Yes, they were at Legacy. Um, Unfortunately, they had their SLPA positions filled, so staying there wasn't an option for me. But I'm glad I ended up where I am now.
I think you're in a really nice spot now. I think maybe I'm a little biased because I like working with you. But so what do you think are some of your like big wins about working in a school? Like what do you like about it and what do you
Mhm.
kind of dislike about it?
There's a few things. I think if you're someone that enjoys getting that time off throughout the year, I think you'll really like working at the schools. You get all of the breaks that the kids do. But I mean, that also comes with cons. Like as an SLPA, you're not getting paid during that time. You're getting paid during major holidays, but not like the spring breaks, the fall breaks, which does happen quite a bit throughout the year. So it's a balance. You get the time off, but you're not really getting paid. Sorry if I keep looking down. I have some notes that I wrote down.
No, I love it. I'm
Um,
so happy you're prepared.
yeah. um, Another thing that I really enjoy about working in the schools is as an SLP, you get to flex your hours. Um, they are very strict about not going over your 40 hours, but that doesn't mean you can't flex them. So I enjoy coming in early and then leaving a little bit later so that I'm putting in a little bit more hours. And by the end of the week, like on a Friday, I'm probably leaving earlier than most days. So I really enjoy that. Yeah. And just overall, the time, um, the the majority of the kids are out by like 3:30, three
Mhm.
fifteen. So that means you're most likely getting home earlier rather than at a clinic. You're working with families who have probably who are working longer. The kids are in school, and so they're waiting um, for the afternoons to use for therapy time. So in the clinic, you're probably working a lot later than you would be in the schools. So I really
Mhm.
like that about working at the schools. Um, what's another thing?
I feel like
Uh,
working in the schools, one of the big positives that I found when I was an SLPA too was
mhm,
like you work 8 hours, like you get
mhm.
paid for 8 hours if you're at the school for 8 hours versus like when you're in the clinic, if a kid no shows, depending on
Mhm.
what your contract looks like with that
Yeah,
clinic, you don't get paid for that time, right?
yeah. That's another big one.
Mm-hmm.
We're fortunate if if a kid doesn't make it to school that day. One, we don't have to make up for it. You could make up for it, but if
Hmm.
they're missing, there's certain times where you can get around with not having to make up for it, and you're still getting paid, which is a big plus.
Yeah, that extra paperwork time sometimes really
Yeah,
comes in
yeah,
handy. Do you have any cons for working in the school? Or well, you said the one with like not getting paid
yeah.
consistently throughout the school year.
hmm Yeah, that tends to be a big one for a lot of people, and
Hmm.
I that's something that I've other SLPAs have related to. We're also hourly. We don't get paid salary, so we're
Hmm.
having to clock in and out during our shifts for like lunch times and things like that. But other than that, I really enjoy working for the schools. I've liked that so far.
Nice.
I have a question. Do you know, like I assume you're under a contract to work for the schools
Mhm.
or under a company that contracts with the school or whatnot. And so you're saying during the summertime you won't get paid, right? But
Mhm.
could you also like work at a clinic in the summer if you wanted? Or is it you're not allowed to double contract?
So I work for the district. I am not contracted. I don't work with the contractor. I work directly
Okay.
with the district.
You're hired by
Um,
the
So
district.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm hired
most
by the district. So
SLPAs.
you could,
Hmm.
you could potentially do like a separate job. I don't know how it is for contracting companies. Um,
Yeah, so
you might
contracting
know more.
companies, yeah, commonly don't contract SLPAs. They're not as much to school districts.
Mhm.
So as an SLPA, typically you're working directly for the district. And with that, you can work at a clinic as well. I know an SLPA actually who has done it and like as an SLP, I did it where I'd work, an extra 3 hours on a Wednesday after school because I had the time to, and I wanted the money at that point too. Or like on a Saturday, you can contract, or as long as it's outside of your hours, you're able to. You might need a different supervisor for each place, or you have to ask your supervisor to supervise you in multiple spots.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Uh, no problem. Um, okay, caseloads. I think this one's fun with you because you bounce around a lot. So whenever there's need in our district, I feel like Daisy goes. So right now, how many schools are you at?
You might be, I think, surprised. I've spoken to my sister, and I think this is actually the first year where my caseload is a lot lower than previous years. Yeah, so my caseload
Yay.
right now stands at like around 60. When I
Mm-hmm.
first started, I remember it was a lot higher. And it probably just has to do with the enrollment this year. I know at one of the
Mm-hmm.
schools that I'm working at, the enrollment was a lot lower than it was in previous years. So that has reduced my caseload significantly. Um, I do work with different programs at the district that we both work at. So I am scattered a little bit everywhere. I go to different schools, but my caseload is
Not
To
too
me
bad.
feels lower this year.
Yeah, 60 is not too bad. And
Mhm,
so you said you will go to different programs. Which
mhm.
programs are you going to right now?
Right now, I am doing preschool. I'm
Mhm.
doing Head Start. I'm doing walk-in services for families that qualify at the preschool. I'm doing Gen Ed. But throughout the years, I've done a variety. I've done CCA. I've done life skills. I've done the list goes on.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
I've done a good variety.
I think that's really cool. I love that you have like a nice range and you have some school age students and then you have some of just the cute little ones.
Mhm,
And I always kind of enjoy the walk-in students at
mhm.
this preschool. So these are all students who qualify as SLI only, so speech language impairment only. Usually, typically, they
Mhm.
are articulation students, but
Yes.
not always. And with that, they qualify for services. They come in for a 30-minute speech session and then go home afterwards.
Yeah.
Ooh, we have a good question from April. Daisy, do you travel to several schools each day or do you travel a couple of times a week? So what does that look like for you?
So I do tend to different schools, but I'm not traveling throughout the day. So, for example, one of the schools that I am at, I'm there on Mondays and Thursdays. The next school, I'm there just on a Tuesday. And then the third school, I'm there just on Friday. So I'm attending various schools, but I'm not traveling throughout the day.
I
So,
feel like our district really tries to not make you have to
mhm,
travel during the day, like making the caseloads manageable per school.
yeah.
I feel like that's pretty common too.
Mhm. I think the only time when I was traveling is when I was treating the private placement kids.
Okay.
So because we don't have a spot at those partnering schools, I would just go provide the therapy and then I would come back to my home school. So that was the only
Mhm.
time where I was traveling throughout the day.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, we talked about kind of what you do, what a typical day looks like a little bit. Do you want to talk? Do you feel like you have more to talk about what a typical day looks like, or how do you know how much of your day is spent like therapy versus taking notes or doing notes and
I
prepping?
the majority, you know what? I think throughout the years I've changed the way I prep. When I first starting, I think I wasn't managing my time correctly, and I was spending a lot more time than I needed to. Whereas now, because I am very fortunate that I'm consistent with the schools that I've been working at. I'm familiar with the kids. I'm familiar with the teachers, and just it just makes prepping a lot more easier. Whereas before, I was spending a lot more time. But now, usually, when I get to work, I get there early. I give myself a couple minutes to just gather my materials and select the goals that I want to target for the day. And therapy starts pretty early for us. We try to utilize all the time that we can because we're working around their schedule. We can't pull during lunch hours, recess time, those first 15 minutes of instruction. The list goes on. There's a lot of, there is minimal time that we can utilize throughout the day for therapy. So if the school start at 8:15, by like 8:30, maybe even latest 9, we're like beginning therapy. So we're just trying to utilize as much time as we can. And that's typically what it looks like throughout the day. Unless I have like a couple breaks in between, I'm using them to finish notes. I might be having a conversation with my supervising SLP. She might be providing feedback. Just any way that I can utilize my off time to just make my workday lighter and just easier and make it flow nice. That's typically what I do throughout.
I know for me, we try and do all of my therapy in the morning and then I'll
Yeah.
leave the afternoon for my notes. But like it just kind of worked out this year that I
Mhm.
could actually do that.
Yeah.
But I always think it's like the worst to have therapy in the morning and then your lunch block and then having to go back to therapy in the
Yes.
afternoon.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Yes. It can be hard coming back from lunch, especially if you have more than 30 minutes, like if you're having a longer lunch, it definitely is hard to come back. And
It really is.
yeah, sometimes those afternoon groups tend to drag, but
Hmm.
we just gotta pull through.
Um, so when we're talking about your day, we've talked a lot about therapy, taking notes, prepping, conversations with your supervisor. Um, are there extra duties that you have to do as an SLPA? Are you ever put on like bus duty or anything like that?
Fortunately, no.
Okay, I didn't
I don't
think
know if
so.
that. Yeah, I don't know if it's the same for everyone else. The schools that I'm at, I've never been asked to do it. Um, so yeah, and I appreciate that because it gives me more time at the beginning of the school day and at the end. So
Hmm. I
yeah.
think it's a great question to ask when you're interviewing somewhere is like,
Mhm.
am I expected to perform duties outside of my job role?
Mhm.
Because it's something to take into consideration. And listen, I wouldn't mind being outside with that stop sign as the crosswalk person. I
For
want to yell
sure.
at those people. Or maybe it's something you really don't want to do. That's a good question to ask.
Yes.
Okay, what is your most rewarding part of your job?
Oh man, I think when a student can come up to you and tell you, for one, they can finally pronounce your name correctly. I think that's
Ah,
like
mhm.
so nice. Like my last name has an R, and a lot of my kiddos that work on those R's struggle with it. And so when that you have that student that's been working all year in those R's, and they can finally come to you and say your name the correct way, like that's something as simple as that just feels so rewarding. I've had kids that who've worked on fluency throughout the entire year for many years, and then they finally come and they say, I was able to order at a restaurant, and like nothing beats
Mhm.
that feeling. I think that that part of our job is just so rewarding, and it just opens our eyes on how powerful speech therapy really is, and how we get to make a change and a difference in their lives. And that to me is just such an unbeatable feeling.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I
Yeah.
love your story about an art student too. I
Yeah.
don't know, I told you this is a phonetics class, so you did great. Thank you. Um, so knowing what you know now, do you feel like any classes that you took were like super duper helpful? Don't tell us about ones that weren't, but any classes that you were like, wow, I like actively remember something from this class,
Mhm.
or do you feel like not really?
Um, there was a couple that stood out. I think there was one that was on like behavior management. I remember taking one on behavior management, and at the time, there was things that stood out, but I didn't. I don't think I realized how much you needed working in the schools. It can get tricky when you are experiencing behaviors during your speech session, and it plays a big role because you probably have spent all day prepping, and then the minute that you're ready to just go full in with everything that you prepped with, then the student that you're working with is just not budging. Like they're not working, they're refusing, like it just everything gets thrown out the window, and like all your hard work, all the time that you spent on it, it's just kind of feels like it was pointless. So I remember just taking those tips about behavior management was really helpful for me, because you probably will see a lot of it in the schools. So that one was really helpful. All the ones that like about articulation were also very helpful. I don't think you can ever have enough strategies, tips, tricks. You can never have enough of that because what might work for one student might not work for the other. So the more you know, I think, you know, the better.
Yeah,
You'll always
definitely.
need different ways to sound and just, yeah.
Hmm. The behaviors is such a good point to bring up. I
Mhm.
feel like I have definitely felt that feeling of like I worked so hard to prep this and I picked
Yeah.
out something that I knew you would like and now you don't.
Isn't that the
And I
worst?
remember
Like
it's
you
so
go in
bad.
so confident. You feel so confident and then it just doesn't work out.
I think my favorite though is after that session going over to my coworker and being like, ah, and relying on that piece.
Mhm.
I remember when you were covering a maternity leave at
Yeah.
my school, you were very good at the behavior management. Like we had a couple of kids that I was like, I can't see them anymore. Like if this kid wiggles out of his seat one more time, I'm going to scream. It's now Daisy's turn. I'm done. And they sat in their seat perfectly for Daisy.
Yeah. It also helped that prior to working as an SLPA, I had school experience, and I actually worked for a behavior school at our district. So I always say if you can get school experience before working as an SLPA, I think that'll come a long way for you. It'll be very helpful.
I think that's a great point.
Mhm.
Definitely. Um, okay, so then, hmm, How, tell me about supervision as an SLPA. I know as you continue in your SLPA being, sometimes supervision like
Mhm.
waxes and wanes, right? Especially with like the seasons of the school year.
Mhm.
What does supervision look like for you?
Supervision has changed for me. At the beginning, you are required to have more supervision, so definitely expect that. But I think because I've had this consistency with my supervisors, I think we've gotten to a point where we've established what works for us.
Mhm.
So supervision looks different for me now. I have more independence, and I enjoy that. I like that my supervisors are there to help me. Like I know that they're there to help me and to jump in whenever I need it. But I also appreciate when they can give me the time to figure things out and just let me be independent for, especially for those kiddos that I've been working with throughout the years. So it can change, but it really just is what works best for you and your supervisor, and really communicating that.
Yeah, that open communication I find to be really
Mhm.
important. And I think like for the assistant that I work with and I, like we check in like we talk to each other every day, but
Mhm.
we will check in on students every quarter at least. Like we'll
Mhm.
write around progress reports when we're writing them. We sit down and do them together and we're like, okay, how's therapy going? This one hasn't made any progress. Is it like them? Are you stuck? Like what's going on right now?
Yeah.
And we'll go through all of it. I feel like progress report times sometimes is more conversations.
Mhm.
Um, but I would agree with like I remember as an SLPA, it felt good to like have those training wheels at
Mhm.
first and like,
Mhm.
oh man, I don't know what to do. Let me go to you. And then being like, okay, just go away and let me do my thing.
Yeah, the and I think some people view it as like, oh my gosh, they're just checking over me and like they're just picking at things, but in reality, there's your supervisor for a reason. Like they know something, they know a little bit more. So that feedback just really comes in handy, and it's just a matter of applying it and working together and just figuring out what works the best for ultimately the student that you're treating.
Yeah, and I think that's like something again to consider when applying for a job is asking what does supervision look like,
Hmm.
right? Because there's times in the clinic it looks different than at the schools. I feel like at the school I supervise my assistant a little bit more frequently than I do at the clinic. The assistant that I have at the clinic, we have monthly conversations. I will sit in on her sessions, but I see a lot more of my assistant at the school's therapy because we work in the same room. So
Yeah.
asking where is the supervisor? Are they on campus? Are they on the same clinic? What does their schedule look like? What does supervision look like at this clinic or school? I think is a great question to ask because it's so important to have good supervision and like trusted supervision,
It
right? On
really
both
is.
sides.
Yeah.
Have you ever had like an argument or like disagreement about a treatment with a supervisor?
You know what? Fortunately, I don't think we have. I don't
No.
think we have. My supervisors are really good about providing feedback after the fact, which I really appreciate. That they're not necessarily correcting me in front of the student. They're waiting until I'm done and, hey, let me suggest this, or like, why don't you try this? Like, this might work a little bit better. So I really appreciate that from all of my supervisors. They're all on the same page on that. I don't think there's ever been a time where we've disagreed. I think we just, if there was something that worked better, we made it known, and just talked it out
Yeah.
and just went with what worked.
It sounds like strong communication skills is
Yeah,
very important.
it really is. Yes.
Um, Fun. Oh, this is a fun question that I feel like I just had a conversation with a friend of mine. Are you seeing any like fun trends in the field, like teletherapy, new AAC? I feel like AI is a huge thing right now that that you feel like there's something worthwhile digging into as a student to learn, or like where do you see some of this crazy stuff going?
I don't work with any EAC. I have really
Hmm.
little experience with EAC, but AI is a big one. A lot of the workshops that I've attended recently, they have all talked about AI, and some of the supervisors are full in, and I have some supervisors that do not like it at all. But me personally, I've been using it a lot, and it's made my life a lot easier. I go in there and I ask it to provide stories. I think that's been the most helpful. Before, I was like struggling to find like resource books where I could find stories, and now I'm just like typing it and it's providing it, and multiple and different kinds, and you can adjust how many sentences if you want it to be L sound, like a loaded L sound story, and S loaded stories. Like, you can just play with it, and it it's just been so helpful.
Maybe
It
that's part
really
of the
is.
reason your prep time has gone down too.
Oh, absolutely. It really has. And I've created so many things too. I've started to create my own visual schedules, overall just visuals, things that I just like think about, and then I just put it into action and I start creating. I have so many now.
Yeah.
But AI just has just come so in handy.
That's awesome. My friend that I was talking about it with, I was like, I know I have to get on the AI train, but like it's so not me, right? And then and they called me old. So now
Yeah.
I have to do
Yeah,
it. So I'm
I
not
think
old anymore.
it's important just to use your, not everything is going to be correct, but it's just important to use your clinical judgment, and it can make mistakes. So you just have to really be on top of it and making sure that you can find those errors, and again, just using your clinical judgment, and not fully trusting everything.
I love that you brought up clinical judgment because I think that's so important. Like we've talked a
Yeah.
lot about how like the phonetics course specifically is difficult because you learn about the speech sound system and then you have to apply it, right? And you have to
Mm-hmm.
think and have those clinical decision making, right? Like we're forming the ability to do that. And that's one of the things that makes this course hard is it's not just memorizing and
Mm-hmm.
then saying like this is this, it's how does that apply continually. So I love that you brought up clinical decision making. Those were all the questions I had. Does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to ask?
Yeah,
A quick
so you
one. Oh,
mentioned, oh, sorry, Carla, do you want to go?
no, go ahead. I'll go after.
Um, you mentioned multiple supervisors. Do you have more than one supervisor?
Yes, I currently have three.
And is it like per school or how,
Yeah,
is that
it's
why
three
you
because
have
I
three?
attend. Sorry.
No, I was just wondering if that's why you have three, is because you go to three different schools.
Yes, I have three because I attend different schools, and
Okay.
they're so I have one for the preschool that I go to, and then our supervising SLP is the one who determines like where everyone is placed. So some supervisors might have more caseload. Might case manage more than the other, but that is the reason why I have three, because I attend multiple.
So in the school district that we're at, like as an SLP, I have a caseload, and then if it's higher than a certain number, I get an SLPA for a certain amount of time based on that. So like Daisy doesn't have her own caseload until everything is settled. And then it's like, okay, you're going to work with this SLP and help out at this school and this school. Um, because in the schools, you first have to have an evaluation done, which is done by an SLP, and then that treatment plan is called an IEP, right? And the SLP then has to do all of those meetings. So if Daisy has 60 students, that would mean one SLP could supervise her and do all 60 of those, but that's all they would be doing. Instead, in order to utilize her properly in multiple places, she comes in and helps with some treatment or does treatment, and then that gives the SLP more time to do some of the paperwork side. And that's pretty common in schools overall. Carla, what was your question?
It was along those lines, so thank you for that. And then you mentioned your caseload right now is 60 and it's on the lower side. What's a typical caseload size?
I think it just depends
It
on
depends.
where you're placed for the year.
Mhm.
Like she mentioned at the beginning, I tend to float around a lot. I tend to cover a lot. But it really just depends. Like I said, my first year I was a lot higher because of the school that I was at. It just happened to have a higher enrollment. And this year it dropped, which is why I got significantly lower. But I think the highest was, I want to say like maybe high 70s, 80s. And that, to me, that was like the most that I've had. It felt like it was a larger caseload. Like I was able to feel it for sure. So it was nice to have a lighter caseload this year, but it really just depends on um, the amount of supervisors, or if you're attending different schools, it really just all depends.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense. A lot of different factors.
and Daisy, usually when you're pulling students, do you have a lot of individual or more groups? And what does that look like?
As you can imagine, I mostly have a lot of groups. Yes, a lot of them are groups. We try not to see more than three at a time. It
Mhm.
gets tricky with data collection if you're seeing more than three, and it just doesn't give the students enough time to practice or to get enough trials. So we try to keep it at a maximum of three. I do have some kids that I see independently, but it's a very few amount.
What
And
does your space look like? Oh, sorry.
oh no, go ahead. I love that question.
Yeah, what does your space look like? Is it like a designated therapy group, or do you utilize the campus, like maybe outside sometimes? What does it look like?
We're so fortunate at the schools that I'm at. We have an entire classroom. I know that's not the case for everyone. I know I've heard stories
No.
about like having a closet or just like a tiny space in the hallway. I can say we're very fortunate to have an entire classroom to ourselves. Um, and like I said, that's not always the case for everyone, but it's what I've been fortunate with throughout the past couple of years.
Gotcha. Does it, oh, sorry.
So I was just gonna add. Sometimes I do like to go outside. Our classrooms get really cold, so we have tables outside, and we'll do therapy outside from time to time. The kids really like it. They also get a break from being in the classrooms all day. You can play around with your space and where you want to provide therapy, as long as it's nothing outside of anything where a student might not be found or anything like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, you can definitely play around with it.
Cool. Okay. Does the school provide you, for example, like your laptop to do your notes? Is it a program, like a program where you do the notes in there for them to see them, or how does that
Oh,
work?
that's a really good question. We do get provided with laptops.
Hmm.
One of my supervisors she pays for a subscription called SLP Toolkit, um, where we both have access, and we have all of our caseload, our schedule, the students' goals, all the notes that I'm including throughout the sessions. And I think the key part is that we both have access. So not only am I inserting the information, but my supervising SLP can look at it whenever. So whenever she has any questions about a specific student, she can easily go in and obtain that information. But it doesn't always look like that for everyone. With my other supervisors, we do written notes. For some, we just do Google Docs, but we share the folders. So it depends. Every supervisor is different. So it just, what works best for them is usually what we go with.
Yeah. Well, thank you. One more really quick, I'm sorry.
Oh,
No,
you're
ask
fine.
away.
A little bit about your role as a bilingual SLPA. A little bit on that, because I'm bilingual too, so I think I foresee that in the future, but I want to kind of see what you've gone through.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's not super expensive. I think the main thing that I do is Spanish screeners. And usually we do Spanish screeners just to rule out if it's like a language difference, or sometimes we're just listening to the student and figuring out if we are seeing similar patterns in Spanish and English, or maybe we're ruling out that there is no, that there isn't an issue and that English is their dominant language. And I just use a packet that we've been using throughout the past couple of years where we look at their expressive language, their receptive language, articulation, and then we talk about it, and then we go based off of that. So that's typically the main thing that I do. Another thing might be contacting those Spanish speaking families to set up IEP meetings, to propose a time, maybe to confirm meetings. I'm trying to think.
In the schools, we're not really allowed to supply therapy in Spanish, right?
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I think when I find myself using it the most with those kiddos who, like, for example, are walk-in kiddos who haven't been in school and Spanish is their primary language. I find myself using it more with them. But yes, the content is usually in English. I do a lot of back and forth. So I make sure that they understand what we're doing. So we'll do the instruction in Spanish, but a lot of the content is usually in English. But it just varies from student to student. There might be some students who don't understand and announce in English. So it might be more Spanish heavy. So it depends.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
With
Any
your
other questions?
extra Spanish stuff that you're using, does the school district incentivize you at all for making those phone calls or doing any of that, or they just consider it kind of prep work?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the cons. Yeah, so I remember when I applied for the job, that was one of the things that I missed in my interview. But I was never mentioned anything about like any additional pay for being bilingual. You do get utilized a lot for it,
But
but I think it just comes with your role, and if you speak Spanish, you will put it to use for sure.
I'm sorry, I know we're probably going longer than expected, but because you are hired by the school district, you don't have to have any of your own liability insurance, I would assume. Or do you have to pay for your own insurance?
Yeah, I just have my own.
Okay.
I go based off what the district offers. That's one thing about working for the district. You do get really good benefits. So, is that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, I meant the like liability
Liability.
insurance. So it sounds like
So
probably no, that you don't
as
have
an
to do that.
SLPA, I don't think you commonly carry
Okay.
liability insurance because you're practicing under a
Under.
supervisor's
Yes.
license. So,
Okay.
for example, for myself, I carry my own liability insurance, and then my company also has a liability insurance that they have. But since I practice in multiple spots, I wanted to make sure I was covered everywhere. And
Hmm.
liability insurance isn't that much money, where I feel like
Okay.
it's worth worth it as an SLP. As an SLP, I never carried it either.
Okay.
I
That's
don't
good
know
to
if that
know.
was
I
just
had no idea. Yeah.
irresponsible on my own part, but
Yeah. I was just curious.
yeah.
It's a good question to ask. I also did want to ask, sorry, I did also want to mention, it is a possibility that your supervisor might ask you to interpret IEP meetings. Um, I was asked at the beginning of my first year and started to translate, and I just was not confident enough to do it. Those IEP terms are just words we don't use on a regular basis.
Mhm.
So I just wasn't confident, and I wanted to make sure that if I was translating, that I was sending out the proper information because they are formal meetings. So that is a possibility. If you're someone who is bilingual, you could get asked to translate an IEP meeting. It's just not something that I do currently.
I love that you said no.
Yeah.
Right. Like I love that you knew your level, like your level of confidence and
Mhm.
comfortability with it. And like I love that you said no, I'm not going,
Yeah.
I don't feel confident doing that. And you're very
Mhm.
right. Like I've heard translators who are not as confident with the IEP terms. Maybe they haven't translated a lot of school IEPs and they're like,
Mhm.
and it's hard because there's a lot of lingo that we use that is not terms that parents always understand. And then as like a therapist, I know I always try and simplify my language when it is translated, but you don't always do it. Don't
Yeah.
always do it well.
Sure. And I've done it before once, but it was a very easy meeting. So I think that if I had more practice in it, and maybe if I just jumped in a little bit more, maybe I could do it. But my first year, I definitely was not prepared for it at all.
That's awesome. Any other questions for Daisy? Okay. Well, thank you, Daisy, for being here, our
Thank you for
SLPA.
having me.
It was so awesome. I love that we had some good conversation about being an SLPA. I loved that we got to talk about the nitty gritty of the job, the things that we like, things that we don't like as much, and some of the things that have helped you become the great clinician that I know you are. So thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for everything you do for our kids.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot. And I wish you all the best. Good luck and just have confidence in yourself.